The security camera's red light blinked like a lazy eye in the corner of our living room, and I watched my wife Lena notice it for the first time. Her coffee mug paused halfway to her lips, and that perfect lawyer mask she wore everywhere slipped just enough for me to catch the flicker of panic underneath. "New camera system?" she asked, trying to sound casual. The way she said it reminded me of how she cross-examined witnesses, fishing for information while pretending she already knew the answers. "Yeah, installed it while you were on your business trip to Chicago." I settled deeper into my recliner, savoring the moment. "Tom recommended it after those break-ins on Maple Street. You know how paranoid ex-cops get." Lena nodded, but I caught her glancing around the room, probably counting cameras. She wouldn't find them all. Tom had done excellent work hiding the wireless units throughout the house. My engineering background helped too. I knew exactly where to place them for maximum coverage with minimal visibility. "How was the conference, by the way?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "The hotel looked nice in those photos you posted." Her shoulders tensed. "It was fine. Boring presentations. Terrible room service." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "You know how these legal conferences are." I did know. I also knew she hadn't attended any legal conference. The Marriott downtown had no record of hosting any legal events that weekend. I'd called to check, pretending to be interested in booking their conference facilities for my company's annual meeting. "Must have been exhausting," I continued. "You looked pretty tired in that photo at the rooftop bar." The coffee mug slipped from her fingers, crashing against the hardwood floor. Coffee splattered across her expensive heels, the ones she claimed were practical for walking between conference rooms. "Clumsy me," she muttered, kneeling to clean up the mess. "I don't remember posting any photos from a bar. Maybe it was someone else's post. You know how social media works. Everyone tags everyone." I stood up to help, but really I wanted to see her face. "That guy Miles from your office was there too, right?" Small world. Lena froze with paper towels in her hand. "Miles? I don't think so. I mean, maybe he was at the conference too. I didn't really notice." The lie rolled off her tongue so smoothly, I almost admired the technique. Almost. But I'd seen the photos Tom's private investigator friend had taken. Lena and Miles, cozy in a corner booth, her hand on his thigh, his lips close to her ear. They looked comfortable together, practiced. "Well, I'm sure you'll see him at work tomorrow." I gathered the coffee-soaked paper towels. "Maybe you can compare notes about the conference." She nodded quickly, already heading toward the stairs. "I should shower. Long day tomorrow." I watched her retreat, noting how she avoided looking at the cameras. Smart woman, my wife, but not smart enough. After her shower, while she slept beside me, I reviewed the footage Tom had helped me collect over the past month. Hotel surveillance from 3 different establishments. Restaurant receipts charged to Miles's corporate card. Text messages recovered from her cloud backup, the one she'd forgotten to password protect on our shared laptop. My favorite was the video from last Tuesday, when she'd claimed to be working late on the Henderson case. Instead, she was at Miles's apartment, visible through his floor-to-ceiling windows. They weren't discussing legal strategies. I'd built a comprehensive file. Photos, videos, financial records, even GPS data from her phone showing her real locations during her supposed late nights at the office. 15 years of marriage, and she thought I was too stupid to notice the obvious signs. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lena had always been the smart one in our relationship, the one with the law degree, the corner office, the expensive suits. I was just Evan the engineer, good with my hands, useful for fixing things around the house and providing steady income while she built her career. But engineers think systematically. We gather data, analyze patterns, test hypotheses. And I'd just spent 6 weeks conducting the most thorough investigation of my life. Tomorrow, the real experiment would begin. I'd already prepared the first phase. Tom's security company had installed more than just cameras in our house. Every phone call, every text message, every email would be monitored and recorded. Lena's laptop now contains sophisticated tracking software that would log her every keystroke and website visit. She wanted to play games? Fine. But she was about to learn that I'd been studying the rules for years. The next morning, I made Lena her usual breakfast: scrambled eggs, wheat toast, fresh orange juice. She ate mechanically, checking her phone between bites. I pretended to read the newspaper while watching her reflection in the kitchen window. "Big day at the office?" I asked. "The usual. Depositions for the Morrison case, Client meetings. She didn't look up from her phone. Might be late again tonight. Another Henderson case emergency? Her thumb stopped scrolling. What? You said you were working late on Henderson last week. Just wondering if it's still giving you trouble. Oh, right. Yes, it's complicated. She grabbed her briefcase and kissed my cheek, a perfunctory gesture we'd maintained for months. Don't wait up. After she left, I called in sick to work and drove to Tom's office. His security company occupied a converted warehouse downtown, filled with monitors, computer equipment, and enough surveillance gear to make the FBI jealous. Your wife's definitely hiding something, Tom said, pulling up the overnight monitoring reports. Look at this. The screen showed Lena's text messages from the previous evening. Most were routine, grocery lists, appointment confirmations, but at 11:47 p.m., while I'd been sleeping beside her, she'd sent a message to Miles. He's getting suspicious. We need to be more careful. Miles had responded immediately. Maybe it's time to consider our other option. Other option? I leaned forward. What the hell does that mean? Tom switched screens, showing call logs. She made 3 calls after that text. First to Miles, lasted 18 minutes. Then to someone named Jennifer Walsh. That's a divorce attorney downtown. Third call was to her brother Rick. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Jennifer Walsh had a reputation for aggressive tactics in divorce proceedings. She specialized in cases where wives claimed emotional or financial abuse to secure favorable settlements. They're planning to divorce me, I said, and they're going to try to make me look like the bad guy. Tom nodded grimly. Gets worse. I ran background checks on Miles like you asked. Guy's been married twice before. Both divorces involved cheating allegations against the wives, but Miles always came out clean. Too clean, if you ask me. He pulled up another file. Miles's first wife, Karen, lives in Seattle now. I made some calls. She's willing to talk, and she has some interesting stories about Miles's pattern of manipulating situations to his advantage. What kind of stories? The kind that suggest your wife isn't his first victim. Or maybe she's not a victim at all. Maybe she's a willing participant in whatever game they're playing. I studied the photos on Tom's screen. Miles and Lena at various restaurants and hotels over the past 3 months. They looked comfortable, confident. Not like guilty lovers sneaking around, but like partners executing a plan. You think this whole affair is a setup? I think your wife is a lot smarter than she's been pretending to be, Tom said. And I think you need to be smarter too. Whatever you're planning, make sure you're 3 steps ahead of them. I spent the rest of the day at Tom's office, learning to use the monitoring software and planning my response. By evening, I had a strategy that would have made my old chess instructor proud. When Lena came home at 9:30, claiming she'd grabbed dinner after her late meeting, I was ready. How was your day? She asked, settling onto the couch beside me. Interesting. I had lunch with my brother Glenn. He mentioned seeing you downtown around noon, but you said you had depositions all day. She stiffened slightly. Glenn must have been mistaken. I was in conference rooms all afternoon. Probably. You know how Glenn is with faces, I smiled. He also thought he saw Miles with you, but I told him that was impossible. Miles drives that red BMW, right? Glenn said the guy was driving a blue sedan. I wouldn't know what Miles drives. The lie came easily, but I caught the slight tremor in her voice. We're not exactly carpooling to work. I nodded sympathetically. Of course not. That would be weird, right? A married woman spending that much time with a single guy? Miles isn't single, she said quickly. He's dating someone. Another lie. Tom's research had confirmed Miles was between relationships, had been for 6 months. But now I knew Lena was actively covering for him, creating false narratives to explain their connection. Good for him, I said. Maybe we should have them over for dinner sometime. I'd love to meet this mysterious girlfriend. Lena's face went pale. I don't think they're that serious yet. Well, when they are. I'm curious about the kind of woman who'd date Miles. I stretched, pretending to yawn. From what I hear around town, he's got quite a reputation. What kind of reputation? The question came out too fast, too eager. She was fishing for information, trying to figure out what I knew. Oh, you know how people talk. Successful bachelor, expensive tastes, likes to be seen with attractive women. I shrugged. Probably just jealousy. Not everyone can afford to wine and dine their dates at the Riverside Grill. Lena's breathing quickened. The Riverside Grill was where she and Miles had been photographed together last Thursday. She thought I was guessing, but I was letting her know I had specific information. I'm tired, she said abruptly. Long day. Of course. Sleep well. I waited until I heard the shower running upstairs, then checked the monitoring system Tom had installed. Lena's phone showed 3 missed calls from Miles, all within the past 20 minutes. She'd also received a text. We need to talk, tomorrow. Phase 1 was complete. I'd established that I was suspicious, without revealing how much I actually knew. Now Lena and Miles would be forced to react, and every reaction would give me more information to work with. I poured myself a drink and settled in to watch the cameras. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. For the first time in months, I felt like I was in control of my own life. I woke up to an empty bed and the sound of Lena's voice downstairs, speaking in the hushed tones she reserved for important calls. The bedside clock read 6:15 a.m., unusually early for her to be conducting business. Moving quietly to the top of the stairs, I listened. The monitoring system would record everything, but I wanted to hear her tone, her inflections. Engineers learn to read stress patterns in materials. People aren't much different. Can't keep doing this, she was saying. He's asking too many specific questions. A pause, then. No, I don't think he has proof. But he's not stupid, Miles. He's methodical. Give him enough time, and he'll figure it out. Another pause, longer this time. Fine. But if this goes sideways, I'm not taking the fall alone. The call ended. I heard her moving around the kitchen, opening cabinets, starting the coffee maker. Normal morning sounds, but I could detect the underlying tension. The way she set the mugs down too hard, opened drawers with unnecessary force. When I came downstairs, she was already dressed for work, scrolling through her phone with aggressive swipes. Early morning? I asked, pouring coffee. Couldn't sleep, decided to get a head start on the Morrison depositions. She didn't look up from her screen. I might be late again tonight. This case is more complicated than we initially thought. Seems like all your cases are getting complicated lately. This time she did look up, studying my face for hidden meaning. It's the nature of the work. You wouldn't understand. The dismissive comment was calculated to make me back down, the way I usually did when she pulled rank with her law degree. But today I just smiled. You're probably right. I'm better with concrete problems, things you can measure and test. I sipped my coffee. Speaking of which, I'm thinking about upgrading our home security system. Maybe add some external cameras, motion sensors for the driveway. Why? The current system seems adequate. Well, Tom mentioned some interesting features, like automatic license plate recognition. The cameras can log every car that comes and goes, create a database of regular visitors. I watched her carefully. Could be useful if we ever have break-in attempts. Lena's knuckles went white around her coffee mug. That seems excessive and expensive. Tom's giving me a discount, professional courtesy. I finished my coffee and grabbed my work jacket. Actually, he's coming by this afternoon to assess the exterior. Hope that's okay. I'll be at work. Perfect. Won't disturb your schedule. I kissed her cheek and headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Lena, if anyone asks, I'd prefer to keep the security upgrade between us. You know how neighbors can be about privacy concerns. She nodded absently, already back to her phone. At work, I struggled to concentrate on the bridge inspection reports spread across my desk. My mind kept returning to Lena's early morning call, the stress in her voice. The way she'd said, if this goes sideways. It suggested they were planning something more elaborate than a simple divorce filing. Around noon, Tom called. Your wife's been busy, he said. 3 calls to Miles, 2 to Jennifer Walsh, and 1 to a private investigator named David Chen. Want to guess what she's shopping for? Evidence of my supposed bad behavior? Bingo! Chen specializes in surveillance for divorce cases. He's probably going to start following you, looking for anything that could support claims of infidelity, financial misconduct, or emotional instability. I laughed, surprising myself. Let him follow me. My biggest vice is stopping for donuts on the way home from work. That's what I'm counting on. But we need to be smart about this. If they're building a case against you, we need to build a better case against them. What do you have in mind? Meet me at the office after work. I want to show you something interesting I found about Miles's financial situation. The afternoon crawled by. I reviewed structural calculations and signed inspection reports. But my thoughts kept drifting to the evening ahead. Whatever Tom had discovered, it was significant enough to change our strategy. At 5:30, I drove to Tom's office, checking my mirrors for signs of surveillance. If Lena had hired a private investigator, he might already be tracking my movements. Tom was waiting with a thick folder and a satisfied grin. Remember how I said Miles's divorce history was too clean? He spread financial documents across his desk. Turns out there's a pattern. Both ex-wives ended up in financial trouble after their divorces, despite initially favorable settlements. How's that possible? Joint investments that went bad after the divorce was finalized, business partnerships that dissolved, real estate deals that turned sour. Tom pointed to highlighted sections in the documents. Miles always came out ahead, while his ex-wives lost money they couldn't afford to lose. I studied the papers, my engineering mind automatically looking for patterns. This looks deliberate, like he's manipulating these investments to fail after the divorce. That's exactly what I think. And if he's planning the same thing with Lena, she might not be as willing a participant as we assumed. Or she might be, and they're planning to use the same tactics on me. Tom nodded grimly. Either way, we need to protect your assets before they make their move. I've got a lawyer friend who specializes in asset protection, completely legitimate, but effective. We spent the next 2 hours planning my defense strategy. By the time I left Tom's office, I had a clear understanding of what I was up against and what I needed to do to win. The drive home took me past the Riverside Grill, where I spotted Miles's red BMW in the parking lot. On impulse, I pulled into a space across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Lena emerged from the restaurant, followed by Miles. They stood close together in the parking lot, their body language intimate and familiar. Miles handed her an envelope, which she tucked quickly into her purse. Then Miles kissed her. Not a friendly peck, but a long, passionate embrace that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. I started my engine and drove home, my mind racing with possibilities. The envelope could contain anything: legal documents, financial information, or instructions for their next move against me. But whatever it was, I'd find out soon enough. The monitoring system would capture everything the moment Lena walked through our front door. For the first time since this whole mess began, I found myself looking forward to the evening ahead. Lena arrived home 45 minutes after I'd watched her leave the restaurant, claiming she'd been stuck in traffic after her late meeting. She moved through our evening routine with mechanical precision, changing clothes, microwaving leftover pasta, settling onto the couch with case files spread across the coffee table. But I noticed the envelope from Miles tucked discreetly into her briefcase, and the way she kept glancing toward the stairs, as if planning her next move. "Productive day?" I asked, settling into my recliner with a beer. "Exhausting. The Morrison case is turning into a nightmare." She didn't look up from her papers. "How was your day?" "Interesting. I had lunch with Karen Hoffman." Lena's pen stopped moving. "I don't think I know her. Miles's first ex-wife. She's in town visiting her sister." I took a slow sip of beer, watching Lena's reflection in the dark window. Small world. Turns out she knows Jennifer Walsh too. The papers in Lena's hands rustled slightly. "Really?" "Yeah, Jennifer represented her in some business dispute a few years back. Karen had nothing but good things to say about her legal skills." I paused for effect. "Though she seemed surprised when I mentioned you might be consulting with Jennifer about a case." "Why would that surprise her?" "Well, Jennifer doesn't handle corporate law. She's strictly family court, divorces, custody disputes, that kind of thing." I finished my beer and stood up. "But I probably misunderstood what you were discussing." Lena gathered her papers with shaking hands. "I think I'll work upstairs tonight. Less distracting." "Good idea. I'll probably watch the game down here." I waited until I heard her office door close, then activated the monitoring system Tom had installed. Within minutes, I was watching Lena pace frantically around her office, phone pressed to her ear. "He knows about Jennifer," she whispered urgently, "and he somehow made contact with Karen." I couldn't hear Miles's response, but Lena's face went pale. "What do you mean? How much did she tell him? What could she tell him?" Another pause, then Lena sank into her desk chair. "We need to move faster. I don't care if it's not ideal timing. He's getting too close." The call ended, and Lena immediately opened her laptop. I watched her access several financial websites, checking account balances and investment portfolios. Then she opened the envelope Miles had given her and began photographing documents with her phone. I recognized some of the papers: copies of our joint bank statements, mortgage documents, and my 401k statements, but there were others I didn't recognize, official-looking forms with legal letterheads. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom. "Emergency meeting tomorrow, 7 a.m. Found something big." I responded, "On my way," then settled back to watch my wife plan my destruction. Over the next hour, Lena made 6 phone calls, sent dozens of text messages, and filled out what appeared to be legal forms on her laptop. She worked with the focused intensity of someone operating under deadline pressure. At 11:30, she finally closed the laptop and prepared for bed. But instead of joining me, she slipped downstairs to her briefcase and made one final call. "It's done," she whispered into the phone. "The papers are filed. We should have a response by Friday." The next morning, I left for work early and drove straight to Tom's office. He was waiting with coffee and a grim expression. "Your wife filed for divorce yesterday evening," he said without preamble. "Emergency petition claiming emotional distress and financial concerns. She's asking for temporary exclusive possession of the house, spousal support, and an injunction preventing you from accessing joint accounts." I felt the room spin slightly. "How do you know this?" "I have contacts at the courthouse. The filing is public record." Tom handed me a folder. "But here's the interesting part. She also filed a police report, claiming you've been stalking and harassing her." "That's ridiculous. I live with her." "I know that, and you know that. But the police report mentions specific incidents, following her to restaurants, making threatening phone calls, installing surveillance equipment without her consent." Tom's expression was serious. "She's building a case for a restraining order." I opened the folder and read through the documents, my engineering mind automatically analyzing the structure of her legal strategy. It was elegant in its simplicity. Establish a pattern of threatening behavior, claim fear for personal safety, then use emergency court procedures to gain immediate advantage in asset division. "This is Miles's playbook," I said. "The same tactics he used on his ex-wives." "Exactly. But we're going to turn it against them." Tom pulled out another folder. "Remember those financial records I showed you? I've been digging deeper. Miles has been systematically defrauding his divorce clients, not just his ex-wives, but women he's represented in their divorces." "How?" "Shell companies, fake investments, kickback arrangements with crooked appraisers and accountants. He inflates asset values during divorce proceedings. Then the investments mysteriously collapse after the settlements are finalized. His clients lose everything, while Miles and his partners pocket the difference." I studied the financial documents, seeing the pattern Tom had identified. Lena's not just having an affair. She's part of a criminal conspiracy, and we're going to prove it. Tom smiled grimly. "But first we need to protect you from their immediate legal assault. I've arranged for you to meet with Rebecca Martinez. She's the best family law attorney in the state, and she specializes in defending against false accusations." "When?" "This afternoon. But first we need to gather more evidence. I want you to go home and act normal. Let Lena think her plan is working. Meanwhile, I'll be documenting every move she and Miles make." I drove home with my mind racing, trying to process the magnitude of what Lena had done. 15 years of marriage, and she'd thrown it all away for a criminal scheme that would destroy not just me, but potentially dozens of other innocent people. But as I pulled into our driveway, I felt something unexpected: relief. For months, I'd been questioning my own perceptions, wondering if I was paranoid or overreacting. Now I knew the truth, and the truth was worse than I'd imagined, which meant my response could be more decisive than I'd originally planned. Lena was waiting in the kitchen, dressed in her best courtroom suit, and wearing an expression of practiced vulnerability. "Evan, we need to talk. I think we should separate," Lena said, her voice carefully modulated to convey reluctant sadness. "This marriage isn't working for either of us." I poured coffee with steady hands, buying time to study her performance. She'd positioned herself near the kitchen island, close enough to seem approachable, but with a clear path to the door. Classic positioning for someone who might need to claim they felt threatened. "That's a big decision," I said calmly. "What brought this on? We've been growing apart for months. Your behavior lately has been—" She paused, as if searching for the right word. "Concerning." "Concerning how?" "The surveillance cameras, following me around town, asking strange questions about my work." She wrapped her arms around herself, a gesture that would look defensive and vulnerable to any observer. "I feel like you don't trust me." I almost laughed at the irony. "Trust is important in a marriage." "Yes, it is, and I don't think we have that anymore." She took a shaky breath. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. I think it would be best if you moved out temporarily while we figure things out." "Which lawyer?" "Jennifer Walsh. She specializes in amicable separations." Another lie. Jennifer Walsh specialized in aggressive divorce tactics, not amicable anything. But I played along. "I see. And where exactly am I supposed to go?" "Maybe you could stay with Tom for a while, or get a short-term apartment." Lena's voice carried a note of false concern. I just think we both need space to process our feelings. What about the house payments? Insurance? All our joint responsibilities? Jennifer says we can work out a temporary arrangement. I'll handle the house expenses for now. With what money? I wanted to ask. Our joint accounts barely covered the mortgage and utilities, unless she was planning to access funds I didn't know about, or funds that didn't legally exist yet. This is a lot to take in, I said. Can I have some time to think about it? Lena's mask slipped slightly. How much time? A few days? This is a major life change. I suppose that's reasonable. But her tone suggested it wasn't reasonable at all. Just try not to make this harder than it needs to be. After she left for work, I called Tom. She wants me out of the house, I reported, trying to make it sound voluntary. Standard playbook. If you agree to leave, it strengthens her claim for exclusive possession. If you refuse, she'll use it as evidence of controlling behavior. Tom's voice was grim. How do you want to play this? I want to end this, all of it, today. What do you have in mind? Remember that evidence you collected about Miles's financial schemes? I think it's time to share it with the appropriate authorities. The FBI Financial Crimes Unit has been very interested in our preliminary findings, Tom admitted. But they'll need more evidence to build a solid case. Then let's give them more evidence. I have an idea, but I'll need your help. That afternoon, while Lena was at work, Tom and I implemented the most complex engineering project of my life. We installed additional monitoring equipment throughout the house. Not just cameras and microphones, but sophisticated recording devices that could capture conversations in every room. Then I made a series of phone calls, first to Rebecca Martinez, the family law attorney Tom had recommended. She agreed to represent me and immediately filed counter motions to Lena's divorce petition, challenging every claim and demanding full financial disclosure from both Lena and Miles. Second to my brother Glenn, asking him to spread some carefully crafted rumors around town about Miles's business practices. Nothing actionable, just enough gossip to make other potential victims start asking questions. Third to Karen Hoffman, Miles's first ex-wife, who was still in town visiting her sister. She agreed to meet with me that evening to discuss Miles's pattern of financial manipulation. The final call was to Miles himself. "This is Evan," I said when he answered. "I think we should talk." "About what?" His voice was carefully neutral. "About you and my wife, and about your interesting approach to divorce settlements." A long pause. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Sure you do. Karen Hoffman told me some fascinating stories about your business practices. I think Lena should hear them before she gets in too deep." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm offering you a chance to have an honest conversation. Tonight, 7 o'clock, my house. Bring Lena, and if we don't come, then tomorrow morning, the FBI Financial Crimes Unit gets a very detailed report about your shell companies and fraudulent investment schemes. Your choice." I hung up before he could respond. Tom looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You sure about this? Once you trigger this confrontation, there's no going back." There was no going back the moment Lena decided to destroy our marriage for money. I checked the recording equipment one final time. But now we're going to make sure she destroys herself instead. At 6:45, I positioned myself in the living room and waited. The cameras were recording, the microphones were active, and Tom was monitoring everything from his office, ready to call the authorities if things went badly. At exactly 7 o'clock, I heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Lena entered first, her face pale but determined. Miles followed, trying to project confidence but clearly nervous. "You wanted to talk," Lena said, "so talk." I smiled and gestured toward the couch. "Please, sit down. We have a lot to discuss." They remained standing, maintaining distance and positioning themselves near the exit. Professional criminals, both of them. "I know about the financial fraud," I said without preamble. "The shell companies, the fake investments, the systematic robbery of divorce clients. I know about the pattern with Miles's ex-wives, and I know you're planning to use the same scheme on me." Lena's face went white. "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Then explain why you filed for divorce yesterday without telling me. Explain the police report claiming I've been stalking you. Explain why you're working with a divorce attorney who specializes in asset seizure." Miles stepped forward. "You're obviously unstable. Lena's been telling me about your paranoid behavior. Have you told Lena what happened to Karen and Susan?" I asked. "About how they lost everything after their divorces were finalized? About the mysterious investment failures that made you rich while they went bankrupt?" "That's enough," Lena said, but her voice was shaking. "Actually, we're just getting started. I pulled out my phone and activated the speaker function. Karen, are you there? I'm here, Evan. Karen Hoffman's voice filled the room. Hello, Miles. It's been a while. Miles went rigid. What is this? This is your past catching up with you, Karen said. I've been talking to Susan and 3 other women you've defrauded over the years. We've been comparing notes, and the pattern is very clear. You can't prove anything, Miles said, but his confidence was cracking. Actually, we can. Tom's voice came through my phone's speaker. The FBI has been investigating your financial network for 6 months. They were just waiting for enough evidence to make arrests. Lena sank onto the couch, the reality of her situation finally hitting her. The divorce filing, the police report, the asset seizure strategy. It's all been recorded and documented, I continued, along with every conversation you've had in this house for the past week. That's illegal surveillance, Miles protested. Actually, it's not. This is my house, and I have every right to record conversations that take place here, especially when those conversations involve planning criminal activities. I looked at Lena, feeling a mixture of sadness and satisfaction. You wanted a divorce? Congratulations. But you're not getting a penny of my money, and you're both going to prison for fraud. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. I called the FBI 20 minutes ago, Tom's voice explained. They should be arriving right about now. Miles bolted for the door, but it was too late. Federal agents were already surrounding the house. As they led Lena and Miles away in handcuffs, my wife looked back at me one final time. I never meant for it to go this far, she said. Yes, you did, I replied. That was always the plan. The house fell silent after everyone left. I poured myself a drink and sat in my recliner, surrounded by the cameras and recording equipment that had captured